The Fanboy, episode 118.
Hi everybody, Mario-Francisco Robles, MFR here with you, and this is episode 118 of the Fanboy Podcast. How's everybody doing out there? I got to tell you, if you own any stock in Warner Media, you're doing quite well today. I mean, did you guys hear? This is what we have to start the show off with, because yesterday there was a gigantic announcement made, and it ties into something I've been talking about here on the show for basically the last 4 or 5 episodes now. So Warner Media announced yesterday that all of Warner Brothers' 2021 planned theatrical releases are going to be arriving the same day on HBO Max. That's right, just like Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be doing in a few weeks' time, that's going to basically set the model for the next year on HBO Max, where all of these Warner Brothers releases will arrive in theaters and on Max the same day. And then HBO Max will have exclusive streaming rights to that movie for the entire month. So for that whole first month, you could either see it in theaters or you could see it at home on HBO Max. And then after that month, the movie will come off of the platform and then be available through more traditional means. But folks, what this basically amounts to is every 3 weeks or so, HBO Max is going to have a brand new movie, a brand new Warner Brothers film that at one point was prepped for a theatrical release, is now going to be coming exclusively to HBO Max. And you know what? That makes me think about something, right? You know, there's a question people ask, right? What's in a name? What's in a name? And I feel like after all these years, we just say HBO without thinking about what HBO even means, right? It's become its own entity, its own brand, its own thing. But HBO Max stands for Home Box Office. The entire mantra of what HBO was supposed to do, what elevated it above regular cable channels, what made it such a big deal and inspired people to pay a premium a premium monthly fee for the service for these last, 30 years, is that it is essentially bringing the theater to your home. It's the home box office. And you know what? HBO Max is essentially using its original brand identity, its original purpose for existing, its original sales pitch is now basically the best way to describe how they're pushing the entire movie industry into the future. Because when they say home box office in 2021, they absolutely mean that. And you know what? We need to talk about the movies coming out, because you may not be, up on all this stuff, and thankfully I am. So as part of the things that are arriving in 2021, all right, I'm going to look at my phone here. For those of you who are watching on the YouTube show, I don't think this looks all that professional, but it's the best I could do for right now. So bear with me. But look, some of the names of the films that are coming out, all right? We're talking Godzilla versus Kong, okay? We're talking the new Mortal Kombat movie. We're talking The Conjuring, the next Conjuring movie, which my wife and I are crazy ecstatic about. We're talking about In the Heights, Space Jam, The Suicide Squad, Dune, Matrix 4. I mean, there's a lot more than that, but those are the ones that make my head explode. Okay, there are a lot of huge movies coming exclusively for the first month to HBO Max. Now, what does this make me think? First of all, this all has to circle back to what we were talking about last week. Because remember, I shouldn't say last week. I should say 2 weeks ago when we had the last new episode of the show. On the last show, I got a lot of questions because that was in the immediate aftermath of the Wonder Woman 1984 announcement. And there was a lot of questions about, how does this basically make business sense for HBO Max? How does this work? Instead of Warner Brothers getting all of this amazing box office money, now it's coming free to a streamer. So what's it going to do? And from there, I went into a whole tirade about things called ancillary benefits, things that, aren't very obvious, but they help the overall business that you're trying to build. There are little things that you can't necessarily see with your own eyes, but that help the business immeasurably. So with that in mind, one of the things that I think that this is going to achieve rather ingeniously is nobody's going to be canceling their subscription. This guarantees practically that a lot of the folks who are going to plop down their first dollars this month to get HBO Max so that they could see Wonder Woman 1984, or maybe they're just going to get a free month, which I think is crazy. You really should just not offer the free month, HBO. Take my word for it. You're going to... Anyway. But what this means is, if you know that there's going to be another world premiere Warner Brothers picture arriving on HBO Max basically every month within 3 to 4 weeks of each other, that's going to essentially motivate you to keep the service. While you may have thought, okay, I'll just get it for 1 month and I'll check it out and I'll get to see Wonder Woman 84. As soon as you realize, oh, wait a minute, having HBO Max basically means I have a movie theater at home, because all of these movies that I would normally have to leave the house and pay premium prices for and go to a movie theater to see, I could see on my couch. So if you ask me, it's a rather genius play to have all of these films arriving in rapid succession, almost on a monthly release model, exclusively on HBO Max. That is a good way to make sure that all these people who are going to try it out in the next few weeks keep it for an entire year. And you're going to get $15 a month from each of those people all year. And guess what? Those people were unlikely to go to a movie every single month, but they're going to have your streamer every single month for that $15. So in an odd way, like, it secures a lot of steady cash flow, and I feel like it sets them above and beyond all the other streamers, because now anyone else who tries this is just going to look like they're copying Warner Brothers. It's going to look like they're trying to catch up to HBO Max, which is funny, right? Because HBO Max, for the longest time, since its debut, people have been dogging on it. People have been saying, oh, it launched to weak numbers. They screwed the whole thing up. It wasn't available on Fire Sticks or Rokus. It was, a lot of people chastised the launch of HBO Max. And heck, I mean, I even thought it was kind of ridiculous that they didn't do a better job of marketing the fact that, like, HBO Now and HBO Go and HBO Max are all essentially the same price, coming from the same place, but HBO Max has all this other stuff. You have a lot of people who didn't even seem to get that, didn't even seem to know that, with all of these different variations of HBO flying around. So HBO Max didn't really have the strongest launch in the world. And it's been kind of like the little engine that could behind all of the titans, like Netflix and Disney Plus and Prime Video and Hulu and all those other ones. But now they're about to move to the forefront by literally becoming the embodiment of the home box office. And it's going to make them the premium option out of all the streamers. Because all the other streamers have the same kind of typical releases. You're going to have some TV shows. You're going to have a couple of made directly for this streamer movies. And then you're going to get theatrical movies a month or two after they arrive in theaters. HBO Max is going to give you fresh, brand new, exciting, buzzworthy blockbusters the day they arrive in theaters. You cannot tell me that that doesn't change the impression of what this streamer is and can and will be. So this is gigantic news. And I mean, we're living in a very different time now, movie fans. We're living in a time now where these are the kinds of decisions that the studios have to make. Isn't it nuts? And before I move into the next subject, I should add that HBO Max seems to have just heard me because I just checked. I just checked if there was anything else about this story that I should mention before I move on. And as it turns out, they did just announce, as part of this whole big thing, is, by the way, I'm actually recording this on Thursday, so the news happened like an hour ago. But they just announced that the free trial is indeed being abolished. Isn't that hilarious? HBO Max will not be doing the 7-day free trial they were offering, and they're cutting it off 3 weeks before Wonder Woman 84 comes out. So it looks like they heard my suggestion. So you're very welcome, Jason Kilar. You're very welcome, all the people there at Warner Media. Toby Emmerich, you can call me later and we can discuss. You're welcome for my brilliant idea. But yes, thank goodness you cut the free trial, because this is about to be how Warner Brothers runs away with a ton of money at a time when everyone was worried about, like, what does this mean without releasing Wonder Woman 84 into theaters? You know, they're giving up everything. They're giving up the whole house. This is an insane play. Well, here we are now. Does it look insane to you anymore? Does it look crazy to you anymore? I don't think so. And now I'm going to dive into some stuff that you guys asked me to discuss, because truth be told, aside from this Warner Brothers throwing the entire kitchen sink onto HBO Max news, aside from that, there's not a ton this week to talk about. It's been pretty ho-hum in the news department. So I'm going to get to some of the topics that y'all asked for. So this first one came to me from Twitter, from Bat of Gotham. Bat of Gotham asked, should a theatrically released Batman movie be R-rated? Well, Bat of Gotham, this is something that I've thought about a lot. Early on in the run of this show, somewhere in the first, 30 episodes of this show, one of the first things I discussed in long form was this idea of, is it okay that we take these characters and intellectual properties that were originally created to capture the minds and hearts and imaginations of children? Is it okay to take those kinds of properties and characters and mythologies and adapt them in such a way that they can only really be enjoyed by an adult? You know, adapt them in such a way that it actually excludes the original target demographic of that property. You know, because that's something that's been going on a lot. With the explosion of geek culture in the last 20 years, where the Comic-Con crowd became the cool kids all of a sudden, one of the things that has been going on is all of these properties, all of these TV shows and characters and comics and video games and things that at one point or other were originally aimed towards kids have now been turned into something that is entertainment for 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. And it's just kind of the norm for everyone. And I've kind of wondered, like, is that weird? Or is that like a betrayal in some sort of way? Considering these characters and things were meant for kids, is it weird now to adapt them in such a way that only grown-ups can dig them? And, one thing that's changed since I last spoke about this back in 2017, one thing that's changed is the multiverse has arrived. All of these different ways of enjoying your entertainment have arrived through the streaming services. And with that sort of, the way that impacts things for me is there will be a version of these characters for everyone. Right? There will be cartoons of Batman. There will be things that kids can check out. So in theory, making an R-rated Batman movie is not the end of the world. A few years ago, it felt like it because I was like, well, you know what? If this is going to be the one mainstream depiction of the character, it feels kind of weird to basically go, hey, kids, you can't watch this. This is too bloody and too violent and too intense. So you're not allowed to watch a Batman movie. Like that feels wrong, even just saying it. But at a time now where we're going to have multiple versions of these characters. We have different Flashes running around and different Superman flying around and different Jokers committing crimes and different Gothams. We're in a place now where, in theory, you can have your cake and eat it too. Because, you can have like an R-rated Elseworlds Batman tale. Who knows? Maybe even Matt Reeves' film will ultimately end up R-rated. I mean, that first teaser was pretty dark and violent and menacing. It looked like a Seven. It looked like not a Seven. It looked like Seven. It looked like a David Fincher movie. It doesn't look like one I'm going to be racing my kids to the theaters to go see, or at this rate, race them to the couch to go see. But yeah, so yeah, like the Reeves Batman might end up rated R, but that doesn't mean that they can't release they could release a Lego Batman a few months later and that'll be for the kids. Or a year later, they could release a Justice League Mortal type of movie that has nothing to do with the Matt Reeves Batman movies and introduces a more family-friendly Batman. We're in this weird place now where the studio seems perfectly comfortable, and not just one studio, all the studios. Marvel's doing the same thing. We're entering a place now where the creators, for the people who distribute all these types of movies and TV shows, they're basically saying, take your pick. There's going to be lots of versions of these characters for you to enjoy. If you don't like the one that's in theaters, go to Disney Plus, go to HBO Max, go to Netflix, whatever it is. You will find another version of that character that'll work for the kids or work for a different demographic entirely. So that's kind of like the new wide open frontier we're in. So if you'd asked me a few years ago, I'm pretty sure if you can go find, I don't know if they took it down, but over on the old podcast, over on Los Fanboys at Latino Review or LRM Online, whatever it is they're calling themselves nowadays, I remember we tackled this in long form, and I took a pretty hard stance against it. This was actually, I remember it because it was about 2 weeks before Batman v Superman arrived in theaters when they announced that there was going to be an Ultimate Edition that was rated R that would be coming out a few weeks afterward. Remember all that weird messaging, by the way? When I think back on that whole episode and that whole chapter in Warner Brothers DC saga, there's so many baffling moments where you just want to go, who thought this was a good idea? Who thought, hey, fans, guess what? This movie that we've been promoting since last year, and it's this huge deal that leads to our Justice League movie. Yeah, you're going to get a version of it in 2 weeks, but then you're going to get the ultimate version on home release like 3 weeks later. Because the Ultimate Edition was announced basically before, and it was coming out just afterward. It was like, it was this weird like compromise, I feel, where the studio told Snyder, like, yeah, we're going to cut a half hour off your movie so that we think it'll hopefully make it more profitable. But don't worry, we'll put your version on Blu-ray and people will like that. To me, what that ended up doing was it made people who felt like, well, I'd rather see the unadulterated version of this movie. And apparently I only have to wait a few more weeks and then I can get it on Blu-ray. So, that was all just a tangent. But that's all to say, when that news came out, that Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice would have a rated R cut, I was not happy with that. To me, the idea of a Superman movie, of a Batman movie, of a Wonder Woman movie, a movie like that I can't bring my kids to. Like, to me, it just felt so off. It felt like you can't do this. That is taking things too far. That's taking something that's supposed to inspire kids to go get their Wonder Woman underoos. And now you're basically saying, no, you're not allowed to. This is only for your parents to enjoy. It just didn't feel right. But, now we're in a different position. Now we're in a place where there could be a different Batman for everyone. And I'm kind of here for it, Bat of Gotham. This next one also comes from Twitter. This comes from G.T. Kelly, who I've spoken to. He's writing an amazing book, by the way, but we'll talk about that some other time. But G.T. Kelly, the wonderful author that he is, sent in a question. He asked, I'm seeing rumors of Vincent D'Onofrio reprising his Kingpin role in Spider-Man 3 due to the multiverse. Any thoughts on that? Well there, Mr. Kelly. What I think is this. I think we all have to take any rumor regarding Spider-Man 3 with a huge grain of salt, because there's a lot of crazy ones out there. And for good reason, mind you. There's crazy rumors because of the fact that we're going into the multiverse thing, and they brought in Jamie Foxx, and there's all this thought of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield showing up. And we already know that we have the J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson popping up in there. So there's lots of insanity happening within this Spider-Man 3 movie already. And when people start hearing multiverse and people start hearing that it's entirely possible that Spider-Man faces villains from across his entire cinematic legacy in this film's third act, that Doctor Strange is going to appear, basically any rumor now sounds like it could be legit because this movie sounds like it's going to be completely insane. So when it comes to these rumors, you just got to take a deep breath. A lot of them sound great. A lot of them sound, strangely enough, possible and plausible in this brave new world that we're entering. But until they get confirmed, you got to just hang back. But also, and most importantly, when it comes to Kingpin specifically, there's another sticking point in all this. Because remember, it's not just a matter of Disney deciding they want to bring in some of those Netflix Marvel characters, right? Because there was a lot of buzz earlier this week because Daredevil, the rights officially became available again for Disney or for Marvel Studios to properly reintroduce Daredevil. And there was a lot of people saying, well, then they should get back Charlie Cox. And, they want, there was a big hashtag Save Daredevil movement online. So when it comes to that stuff, though, this isn't just a matter of Marvel Studios or Disney, the parent company, deciding, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and bring in some of these Marvel Netflix characters. Because Spider-Man 3 isn't just a Marvel Studios movie, isn't it? It's a Sony Pictures production as well. And we also know that Sony has been dying to take Spider-Man into their own little playpen and basically take him back from Marvel Studios. That's what happened last August before Tom Holland was somehow able to stitch together a deal to keep him attached to the Marvel Cinematic Universe for at least one more movie. But in this particular case, it would take Disney getting an okay from Sony to bring in a character from a Marvel Entertainment TV show, which doesn't even exist anymore. That Marvel TV studio doesn't even exist. That's one of the reasons why, all those Marvel Netflix shows went away. It's a whole other ball game now. So here's Disney Plus saying, can we take a character from a Netflix show that we forced to cancel and put them in a movie that involves a character you own the rights to? So it really comes down to, will Sony go for it? And is there enough of a reason, enough of a motivation to include him in this film to kind of cut through whatever kinds of weird red tape or potential bloating of the plot bringing him in could do? Because listen, Kingpin is a great Spidey villain, and I'm with you, GT. I would love to see Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin face off against Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I mean, that would be one for the ages. Those are two tremendous actors, and I think it would be absolutely amazing. And in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Kingpin was more or less the main villain. So there already is kind of in the pop culture lexicon, this idea of Kingpin as Spider-Man's villain. In the present day, in contemporary Spider-Man storytelling, Kingpin has been a villain very recently, even in that wonderful Spider-Man game on PlayStation. Kingpin factors rather large in the first, third of that game. So I totally understand the want for it. I think it would be amazing, but people have to remember the Sony Pictures element because Sony has their own plans already. Sony's already made, they've got Venom 2, they've got Morbius, they've got plans for where they want to go with Spider-Man after this. This is, they've already got a vision for this. So trying to just squeeze in other people might be a little more of a difficult task. But listen, if they're able to do it, oh my goodness. Who wouldn't kill to see D'Onofrio's Kingpin in a Spider-Man movie? That would just be, and then if they can get Cox's Daredevil to team up with Spidey in that, even better. But I feel like it would be a lot easier to say that that's all very likely if all of these characters were all under the same exact umbrella. If Disney owned them all and Spider-Man was just like any other hero in the, Marvel gallery, then I would say, yeah, that sounds like it could really happen. But the Sony Pictures thing is the wild card. So I hope that answers your question, GT. And lastly, before I wrap things up with a long-form discussion on Superman and his origins and using Frank Miller's Superman Year One to have a pretty in-depth conversation with a fellow passionate nerd about Superman and his mythology and his arc in that book, and the elements that are essential and non-essential and the things that I'd never really seen done before that were handled a certain way in Superman Year One. Before we get into that, I gotta talk to you for a couple minutes about The Mandalorian, because I finally got to start season 2 last week. I cracked the whip, guys. As I mentioned a few episodes ago, the big holdup was not a lack of interest on my part. I've been jumping up and down waiting to watch The Mandalorian season 2 basically since the moment that season 1 wrapped. But I was being a nice husband. I was being a good boy. And my wife really wanted us to finish The Haunting of Bly Manor on Netflix before we started Mandalorian. But for whatever reason, probably because she could tell I'm just not into it, we really stalled out on Bly Manor. And we have still the finale has been sitting there waiting for us to watch it for about 3 weeks now. So finally, last week, after we put the kids to bed, I told my wife, I'm like, I can't keep waiting. I keep hearing that the show is unbelievable this season. I'm missing out. Every time people tweet about it, I have to scroll past it so quickly because there's always some kind of spoiler. There's so many things that are apparently happening this season that are buzzworthy and that everyone seems to want to dissect and hypothesize and come up with theories for. I need to see this. So I cracked the whip, and last week we finally started season 2. So that's the good news. The bad news is it was just the one episode. So I'm still woefully behind. So far there have been 5. There have been 5 and I've only seen one of them. So I can't go into too much detail about what's gone on these last few weeks, but just from watching the first episode and just from hearing some of the things, I haven't gotten like very direct spoilers, but I more or less, certain things have been, unfortunately, have seeped through. No matter how much I've tried to avoid them, certain things and certain elements happening this season have made their way to me. And so even just based on that, I've got something to say. Because to me, The Mandalorian is the promise fulfilled of this of the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. This is the promise fulfilled, because back in 2014 when they first announced it, or 2013, whenever it was, when they announced the sale, all the headlines were about the sequel trilogy. That Hamill and Ford and Fisher were returning, that there was going to be an episode 7, 8, and 9. And that was kind of like the big headline, aside from the fact that, George Lucas has sold Lucasfilm to Disney. That was the big thing that a lot of fans were locked in on. But the part of the announcement that really piqued my curiosity was, at the time, this idea of the anthology films, this idea of stories and movies set within the Star Wars galaxy that are not related to the Skywalkers, that are a completely sort of original story. And that, to me, had me the most excited. It wasn't necessarily going back to see my old favorites again. It was the idea of, wait a minute. So there have been entire generations of storytellers and creators who were directly inspired by Star Wars and by George Lucas and the sandbox that he created. This means that we can see all those people, or not all of them. You couldn't, if you got everyone who's ever been inspired by Star Wars to make a Star Wars movie, I think it would break the whole thing. But now we get to see the creme de la creme. We get to see top level creators flexing their imagination muscles in the Star Wars galaxy, checking out uncharted territories, exploring and expanding that world, adding new twists and layers to the genre that George Lucas gave us. I was more excited about the original adventures that were to come than the continuation of the old ones, which is why I was ultimately somewhat let down by the fact that the first two anthology movies piggybacked so heavily on on the original trilogy. You have Rogue One, which leads us into Episode 4, and you have Solo: A Star Wars Story, which is really just, it's a mild prequel to Han Solo, a character we already know, and explaining things that we didn't necessarily need explained again. Rather than letting storytellers explore all new territory, they were playing it very safe. And then The Mandalorian came around. To me, this series exemplifies what I was hoping someone would do. I was hoping if you give someone the creative freedom to create something special and unique that both honors and enhances the Star Wars mythology and pushes off into new directions, that is what's going to be the big bonus in all this. Not just, all right, let's go see the old folks again. You know what I mean? Like, that was always going to be great. But to me, it was always about what happens after Episode 9. Where do we go from there? And the fact that Lucasfilm, even at that juncture, when they announced the sale, they were already talking about telling stories unrelated to the Skywalker saga. That's where I'm like, when they get to that, that's going to be the true test of whether or not this sale is a win or a loss for us. Now, while we can all argue the merits of the sequel trilogy and whether or not they really lived up and whether or not Rian Johnson did this or J.J. Abrams did that, while we can do that, that's all in the rearview mirror now. Now, The Mandalorian is our gateway to Star Wars. And in a few years' time, after Kenobi has come to Disney Plus and all that, then when there are eventually movies again, you got to imagine it's going to be something Mandalorian-esque, not necessarily based on that mythology, but the point is something that's new. Something where here's a protagonist you've never seen before, doing things that you've never seen done before, set in this world that feels like home to you. And it's being done by people who also love this world as much as you do, because that is what makes The Mandalorian so great, right? You could feel the love of Star Wars that permeates off the screen with this show. You can feel Jon Favreau's, affection for George Lucas. You can feel Dave Filoni's respect and dedication to doing this universe justice. You can see in the set designs and the costumes and every single thing about The Mandalorian shows you this is a Star Wars fan passion project. And I'm just obsessed. So that's why to me, I'm glad Episode 9 is behind us, because Mandalorian is the future of Star Wars. And this is what I've been waiting for since the sale. And just one neat little thing while just watching Episode 1. And I meant to say this. I mean, I wasn't doing the show when Mandalorian Season 1 came out. I was kind of on my hiatus. But when I watch that show, one of the reasons I geek out, one of the things I like about it is this feels like Batman in space. Because sometimes when you look at Mando, he's all mysterious and brooding. He's got the cape. He's got the grappling hook. He's got all these gadgets on his belt. This feels like space Batman in a way at times. The way the action is framed and done, it's kind of incredible. So I just kind of wanted to mention that because I totally get Batman vibes. And I'm just wondering, does anyone else get Batman vibes? Because I have for a very long time. But, all right. So I've been giving a lot of thought ever since, in a way, rediscovering Man of Steel a few weeks ago. I've been thinking a lot about Superman's mythology and the things about it that mean the most to me, and the things that I think are essential, and the things that I think set up the character in the way that speaks the most to me. And one of the most recent attempts to sort of reboot or inject new life into the Superman mythology was Superman Year One by Frank Miller. So while talking about that with my cousin, it dawned on me, I should have him on. Because my cousin Brandon is also a podcaster. I've mentioned him a couple times because him and Isaac have the Amateur Otaku podcast. And he's a great guy. A lot of the early, Fanboy podcasts were really just me talking to Brandon after a movie when I was 15. Our family has always dissected movies and all of these kinds of geeky entertainments in ways that are very sort of in-depth and passionate. And, he was always right there with me where we could talk about this stuff for hours after the movie since we were kids. So when I was thinking about discussing Superman Year One and knowing that Brandon had a lot to say about it, in fact, well, I won't give it away. I'll talk to you about why he is linked to that book when it comes to me. I decided I should have Brandon on for this discussion. And I thought it might go for, maybe 15, 20 minutes, something light, something fun. And we got so inspired. We had an hour-long conversation about Superman. So I hope you like it. Here's my chat talking up Superman's origin by way of Superman Year One with Brandon Alvarado of the Amateur Otaku Podcast. All right. As I live and breathe, I'm staring at my cousin Brandon. Brandon, you're an awesome dude. And last year, was it a year ago? I'm not exactly sure when it was, but it was before all this COVID crap. You knew something was kind of going on with me and I was feeling a little down. And all of a sudden you were like, check your mailbox in a couple days. And then there was this wonderful book at my door, Superman Year One. And I first of all just have to thank you because I unfortunately don't make it much of a habit to go to the comic store and buy myself books or even on Amazon. I just don't buy myself books. I don't read good, Brandon. So I don't read very often. And you presenting that to me was pretty awesome. And it came to me at a good time. And I guess I just want to ask you, what was it about Superman Year One that made you be like, I got to send this to Mario?
Well, I mean, it's a couple of things. And I think the most important thing is, of course, I've known you, sadly, all my life. And
wow. Ouch.
No, that's all love. From this, no. So I've always known how important the world of superheroes is to you, and that fantasy, what they resemble, and the ideas of it. But I know how big Superman is for you, in an intimate way. He's just more than a superhero. He's like that friend that you always had, and you have a very particular connection to him.
Yeah.
And this particular book explores him in a way that I think nobody has quite done it before. And it explores so many different facets of him that make him feel more real, more relatable, and also a lot more grandiose, which is, I think, is the biggest undertaking of this book, because anybody that knows about Superman know that he's Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He is the biggest guy in any room, just by being who he is. But how this book takes his mythology and that God aspect of him and blows it out of proportion. One of the things that I love about the book more than anything, which I think you would have enjoyed, because if anybody knows any, if not all, the most popular origins and even the more obscure origins of Superman is you. Those are probably the only books you read.
I mean, truth be told, it's pretty much just Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man in my collection. That's all I ever have any time for. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, your three pillars, right?
Yeah.
So, with Superman Year one of the biggest things that drew me to it, as you first read it, is that anybody that reads Superman knows that it's this idea of a god among men, this immovable object in the midst of this world of fragility and humanity. But nobody has narrated his story in this Greek Roman mystical sense the way Frank Miller does
I mean,
in this
it's Frank
book.
Miller, you know.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like it's all about that narrative style that I think makes everything that we see in this book fresh. Apart from the decisions of where he takes the character.
Yeah.
Like he takes them and puts them in particular situations that you would not expect them to be there. But the reason he explores that, to explore all the different types of ethical and moral decisions that he has to make. And I think it's a new way of exploring Superman for a new generation. And the best thing about it is that this book, even though it's a great way of introducing new people to Superman, this book was written for people that have already read the story before.
Yeah.
This book was written for people that, okay, I know you know who Superman is. I know you know where he comes from. But this is the way I see him. Like, this is a very personal book for Miller. And what I love about the fact that it's so personal to him is that I can feel that this is the book that if you were to sit with Frank Miller and have a cup of coffee, this is how he would talk to you about Superman.
Yeah.
You know, it's very personal. It's very introspective. I would even say that Frank Miller's voice sometimes is even louder than whatever the story of the book is there. You know? And I don't know, man. The book was great. The book was great.
Well, I agree. So first
What did
of
you
all,
like about it? Yeah.
I mean, I love the hell out of it. Before we get into that, I just want to, again, thank you for sending it to me. Because, I would not have necessarily sought this out. And, there's a lot of things about this that fill in some interesting blanks for the origin, too. Like, I felt like it went into some details that I've never really seen handled quite this way. Even little things like super puberty. You know, like when things are getting hot and heavy with Lana, some of the verbiage in there and some of the, the passion that bounces off the screen. It's like, what would it be like? Your body's going through all these changes and you're becoming a man. Puberty is already weird. Now imagine puberty with superpowers and this girl you're crazy about, and now you have her to yourself. And, it's just, it tackled a few different, all throughout, there's things that I've never really seen Superman tackle, but I really liked seeing those early years and checking out that, that chapter of his life, Isn't
it?
What?
I'm sorry. Since you're right there.
Yeah.
How interesting is it that the entire first issue is all about his childhood?
Yeah. I love that.
You know how most of the times when we
it's like the first 3 pages.
Exactly. First 3 pages, and then he's off in Africa, or first 3 pages, and he's either saving people on this tanker, and apparently a whale saves him.
Sorry, keep going.
There's a lot of whales there. But we're talking about this. Of course, this is DC Black Label, right? So these are premier stories, right? Premier issues. There are 3 issues per story. Each issue is 66 pages. So out of these 66 pages, 60 of them were about his childhood. His time as a toddler, his time as a kid in kindergarten, getting lost, or like the worries of his parents. And then you have the whole time that he spends in high school. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It really explored it in a very in-depth way. And it was interesting, too, because you could tell that Miller really wanted to explore the Smallville origins. We spent hardly any time on Krypton. Because that's something you see a lot of, too, where like a lot of times if they are going to build, spend a lot of time in the beginning of the story, there's a good chunk of Krypton in there. And the whole thing with Jor-El and the Council or Zod or whoever. And here it was really just basically we open on the final moments of Krypton, because really where Miller sees the story starting is when he lands here.
Yep.
And something I spoke about a couple episodes ago when discussing Man of Steel was this idea that I've always loved, when Jonathan and Martha really are the ones who instill Clark's values, who really kind of guide him and give him his conscience and his moral center. You know, there have been stories in the past where he's treated almost like he's just innately good all the time. And he's just, you know, he was just born this way. It's just in his genes to be this amazing, apparently. But for me, it's always struck me as far more interesting to make it that his adoptive parents, like had he not landed in that field in Smallville to Jonathan and Martha, who knows how he might have ended. He might have ended up Homelander. You know, he might have ended up Brightburn, you know, and it's funny because people say that all those dark takes on Superman are sort of lazy. But when you really think about it, like imagine if you had a child that had those kinds of abilities, it would be very hard to parent them and steer them in the right direction. You know, it takes a very special set of parents to take this basically little baby demigod and keep him pure and humble and rooting for the good guys and, you know, on the right side of everything, you know?
Yep.
And I felt like Superman Year One, like, it was just all very interesting to me. Like, you know, Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel, since that's my most recent Jonathan Kent that I was discussing. Remember, his thing was like, Clark, don't ever show your abilities until you're ready. Even if, you know, there's that thing where like, should I have just let them die? And he's like, maybe. Like, he was so like dead set against Clark revealing himself to the world before he was ready to do so, that he basically would like, you know, he wanted Clark to be in hiding. And it was, he gave his own life basically to the tornado in Man of Steel because of that. But now this Jonathan is a different animal because he talks about basically like, you know, yes, your mother's right that you should, you know, might doesn't make right and you got to do the right thing, but sometimes you got to do something, you know?
Yep.
And
my favorite line on this kind of conversation is when he goes like, your mother means well.
Yeah.
But
her heart's in the right place. But
exactly. But you're no one's doormat.
Yeah.
And I like how he takes the time, how you have those dichotomies like in parenthood. I like how this version of Jonathan was very in tune with who he was talking to.
Yeah.
Without losing that he was his son. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like, okay, I know that I'm talking to someone that can probably melt my eyes and melt my brains. But at the same time, I care for him. He's my child.
Yeah.
So I can't be a man and not tell him to do what's right and defend himself. And like, there's like this little gray
because like
area.
with any parent, you know, I've got two kids and I've had to have conversations like that too. Like if somebody's being mean to you at class, you know, sometimes, you know, it's hard because if they say that they've gone to the teacher and the teacher's not helping, a part of you is like, then knock them out, you know, like, you know, you don't do it, but like, it's just interesting too. When I imagine like, what if my kid was Kal-El, you know, like those conversations would be a million times more, you know, heightened. And something else I liked about this Jonathan too, is that he's like young and he feels, you know, there've been lots of iterations of Jonathan where he's kind of like an old man or like the, you know, he just feels, it seems like he's kind of on the other side of things. He's older. This one felt like younger and vital and still like amidst his story with Martha, and they're raising Clark as this youngish couple. And to me, like it just added a little extra sort of vibrancy and relevancy to their connection. It didn't feel like some old man imparting some wisdom. Right. It felt like, you know, I'm trying to relate to you man to man. And I just, you know, there's lots about the way that he was raised in this that I really enjoyed watching. But yes, while we're talking kind of like the fundamental sort of building blocks of Superman's mythology, right? We talk about Krypton, we talk about Smallville. Like, was there anything about the Smallville section of this version of the mythology that really jumped out at you?
To finish the conversation about the Jonathan Kent relationship, I like there's a lot of scenes between them that you can see how that relationship flourishes. Like to me, like you have that moment where they're sitting in his room, you know, after dark, after dinner, where mom's already asleep or whatever, and they're having that conversation.
And it's like they're bros. I like that dynamic.
Exactly. And then you have this towards the end of the issue where they're working on the farm. Mm-hmm. They're all sweating.
Yeah.
They're moving hay or whatever. They're playing catch. Like all these little things.
Do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, like, Like that moment where they're playing catch and in his mind, or of course, as Frank Miller's narration, is like he makes sure not to throw the ball too fast. Those observations.
Yeah.
Those observations were so magical
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you go like that it goes beyond the idea of going into Clark's thoughts. It goes towards the observation of, okay, so the demigod threw it with his left pinky. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And then you see Jonathan Kent with his glove, like if he threw a little bit hard, he's gonna break my hand. But he's still playing catch with him. Like it's like this human idea that he understood that he had a responsibility to the world to raise this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and it makes Jonathan an even more vibrant and real character.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
The whole thing with the whole struggle with Clark and the bullies.
Yeah.
Him finding ways of fixing this. And him actually trying all the right things first. I found that so interesting.
Yeah, and learning hard lessons.
Yep.
You know, and just to sort of like fill it in case, you know, anyone watching or listening hasn't read the book, you know, there's this recurring thing with these high school bullies who come after Clark and all of his, in this timeline, Clark kind of hangs out with the outcasts. He's with the weirdos. Right. He's with, you know, the book nerds and the people who are just a little bit out of the mainstream. And as usual, the jocks and all those kind don't really like them. And they bully them pretty bad. And Clark has to figure out, like, do I stand back? Do I intervene? And there's lots of little lessons throughout that early phase of the story, because at some point he does act out and he kind of shows just a small measure of what he could do to them. And he hurt a couple of them pretty bad or something. And then like the next day they retaliated against his friends and he realized, oh man, did I really make things better? You know, I may have blown off a little steam and felt like a big tough guy helping my friends yesterday, but I didn't actually help because now my friends are getting even more, you know, beat up. And, you know, it kind of shows his evolution as becoming the hero he's going to be. Is part of it is understanding, where do I intervene? Where do I stand back? And when I do intervene, how do I do it? You know, because that was one thing that he was talking about. Like when he was learning from that, he's like, I didn't make things better. And it seemed like Clark gradually was learning now that when I go out there and I'm going to get involved in these things, I have to make sure to make things better. You know, It can't just be, you know, I'm going to beat these guys up and it's going to feel real good and I'm going to get the satisfaction of beating up the bad guy. Right. It's like, no, I actually have to, you know, like save people and make this, you know, make things better. And I like that the book really kind of like locks in on those little key decisions on his way to becoming Superman, you know, his evolution as a hero.
Yeah. And another seed that's right there with that conflict, it's even if it's just a seed at that point, is him learning about the effectiveness in the idea of justice, of journalism. The idea of collecting evidence to prove a point, to bring forth justice, to bring conviction of what other people are doing that is wrong, and him understanding the role of that and how that influences, of course, what we know that Clark Kent becomes in the future. Yeah, you know, and it's all those little things that come from his time in the farmlands. Yeah, that we really haven't never explored, because just the idea of him working on a Daily Planet, right? It's like, for us, for most people, it's a given. Nobody questions it. Yeah. Why? Well, he's a reporter. But why? Because Lois is there. But why? No, he's a talented writer. He's brilliant. But why? Yeah. There has to be. He
doesn't need a job. Yeah, like, well, what's the point?
Exactly. And it all goes back to, and I think this goes back to also to the narrative function of Frank Miller, talking about or narrating the story as this Greek epic and all that stuff, is the idea that, yes, Clark Kent is the identity that he assumed, but he is Superman. Yeah. Like, he is Superman.
Yeah, he even said that. He said Clark is the disguise. You know, make Clark the mask, basically.
Exactly. And and one of the things that I didn't know till reading this book, and it goes back also to Superman Earth One, which is another origin that I read recently, is that the idea of him being in Metropolis, the idea of him being there, is that is the hub to the world. Yeah. That's how he gets in touch with everything that's going on, and him understanding the importance of news, photos, stories, knowledge, all started in the farm.
Yeah, absolutely.
and how he ties everything back is just,
Yeah. Although, for me, one of the great things that Miller did, one of the interesting twists that the turn takes, is that I've never even thought about the idea of Clark enlisting in the army. But if you think about it, kid growing up in Kansas, ideas of being a hero and changing the world, one route one could take is I'm going to, fight in the Navy and defend America and explore the seas. And, you could see how he would be tempted to do that. Yep. And I remember when he first said it to Jonathan, and now they were going to go into the house and break it to Martha, and which that was played so well.
It was very down to earth.
Yeah, and again, Jonathan's on his side. He's like, "Oh, this is going to kill her," but what I liked about that though is while doing the whole Navy thing, they go on that crazy mission where they have to go and, there's an oil tanker that's been overtaken by pirates and yada, yada. And while on that, he discovered that, I can't just kill people willy-nilly. I can't kill these soldiers. They make it sound and look so easy. Just a quick head tap. And they're just going around stealthily killing all these people. While he wanted to find a way to let's end the chaos, but let's not actually kill anybody. It's this idea, and I wrote it down here because it gets to the idea that being a hero is about saving lives, not ending others. You know what I mean? It's where he kind of learned not to be a blunt force instrument here to just break stuff and make a statement and and hurt people. It's no, it almost makes you think about Star Wars: The Last Jedi with what's her name? Rose Tico says we're not going to do anything. It's not about hurting the people you hate. It's about saving the ones you love. And in general, I tie it to this because to me, true heroism comes from saving lives, not hurting or ending others. And to me, that was all that lesson was right in there. And that whole, the whole Navy chapter of the origin to me struck me as what an awesome way to show how Clark evolved into the hero he is, the hard lessons he had to learn, and the disciplines and the restraint and the respect he had to use while being in the Navy, putting up with all the different things he had to put up with. And I just thought that was a great little twist that I did not see coming.
Yeah, and it's funny because it pinpoints Frank Miller's understanding of what it is that makes Superman work. And of course, Superman is so hard to write for, right? No. But the thing about Superman is that you don't give him physical obstacles.
No.
You don't give him epic feats. Those are going to come. Those are part of the package. Yeah. But the way you make him interesting and relatable is by putting in front of him these ethical, moral hoops, questions that he has to ask himself that no one has the power to ask him, but the situations themselves. And what other way for him to understand his role as Superman in the world than to understand that he's not here to be just another soul that will kill lives, that will take orders from someone else, which plays down the line with everything that happens with Lex later. But he's not here just to take orders. He needs to be able to make decisions that nobody else can make because he is the only one that has the power to make them. Mm-hmm. And also, going back to the idea of him enlisting, there's another point of why he did it also too. So what was
explore the world?
Yes,
see his planet, know his planet,
and he's broke.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah, but that makes him very human. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean? Nobody thinks about that.
Yeah,
And Frank Miller, I mean, he doesn't say it, but Frank Miller thought about it. Especially this little line where he goes that, and don't worry, Mom, when I start getting paid, I'll be able to send you guys money. Like,
Yeah.
Like the
He
whole
got
thing.
nothing.
They got nothing.
Yeah.
He grew up with nothing. So he can't just, and it's not about him just flying around the world, which he can. He understands that for him to really know the world, he has to experience it as much as he can as one of us.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is really highlighted, especially in the time that he's training in the Navy, is that he begins to understand how fragile we are. And especially those comments and those thoughts when they're all working out, and you can hear him going, this is so hard for them. Mm-hmm. But they still do it.
Yeah.
And then you see these guys.
Yeah, he's getting all this respect for humans through it.
Exactly.
Also, yeah.
And then you get the whole thing with the guys crying for their mothers and and all those things. And he's seeing this live.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have gotten that if he would have just flown above.
Yeah.
He needed to go deeper into the ground with these humans that accompany him in this life.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny how the dichotomy between, I don't want to jump hoops, but the dichotomy between him and Batman is like Batman saves people or his city by going into the dark corners that nobody wants to go to. But Superman becomes the hero that the world needs by getting deeper and deeper into humanity, whether it's raw or horrible or weak or fragile. And that's how we understand it.
And by finding another way.
Exactly. And here's the craziest thing. Did you notice that this is the one book where Superman is never weakened?
Yeah, there's none of that. Like,
there's none of that, because of course he's portraying this godly being. So how are you going to bring him down? You know what I mean? There's no kryptonite, no idea of something. All they talk about it, and he's just getting stronger, and he's just getting stronger. Won't he stop getting stronger? And he knows that he's getting stronger, but as he's getting stronger and more powerful, he's understanding more. Yeah. Like he's himself is making it a point to bring himself down to the level of humanity. And then he goes and visits mermaids.
Okay, speaking of like things I did not see coming. I didn't see the Navy thing. And then when I see like the next book is just called Atlantis, I'm like, what? And I'm like, is this like an Aquaman thing? Is he going to bump into Arthur down there? And then there's this whole subplot. I mean, not even a subplot. It becomes the main story where he's in love with this mermaid and he's going to, prove to Poseidon that he's worthy of her. And he fights these different sea monsters. He fights a kraken.
And he technically becomes the king of Atlantis?
He becomes the king of Atlantis? Frank, I don't know what Frank was on when he got to that part, but I want some.
No, but you know what's interesting about all that, though, is that I think it's part of, he's trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
Like the first book or the first parts of the book up to the Navy point, right? It's all about him mixing with humanity, right? And blending in and understanding. Now, he needed to present him in the midst of other godly elements.
Yeah.
So now he's within the pantheon. So now he's within these mystical creatures. And even there, he is greater.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting idea, that this is like, he's supposed to be like, of course, when you read the end of the book, like at the end, what is he doing? He's going to space. Like he's going
the next
farther
frontier.
Beyond.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's all about him moving further and further away from humanity, but being the most human element in the book or in the story.
Yeah.
So it's so super interesting. It is super weird because, he follies with the mermaids. But
by the way, so much for that, like, I'll never forget Lana thing. He just like, mermaid time.
Which, if you think about it, it's very typical of that old-fashioned kind of Greek-like story, which it kind of gives you that suspension of disbelief, and leads me to this other point. Did you notice that this book is? It's going to sound super weird, but I think you'll understand what I'm trying to say. this book is excessively Superman-centric. Like every single character is going around his axis. So it's not even about
it really is his story. You're right. I know what you mean, because there are stories where it's almost like he's, we're following Lois's thing and Superman is there or whatever.
Or there's a little bit of main stories here and there with other characters. No.
Yeah,
it's all about
him and his psyche as he goes through all this.
Which is why there's no point of going back to Lana. There's no point of going back to Laurie. And the other thing is, even those characters that are your main supporting roles, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, you don't see Lois Lane till issue number 3, which is the last issue, and she barely has any screen time.
Yeah.
And there's nothing beyond the fact that she's a reporter. So she's only there because she's part of the mythos, because it accentuates his image, not because it's a masculine or this, you know what I mean? It's not this sexist thing. It's just because it's all about the tale of the Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, I don't know, this, I'm in this Greek vibe.
Yeah.
It's super fascinating.
Something else I really dug too is in Metropolis, once he's out and he's established, and it's kind of like a montage of him, doing saves and bringing people to the police. There's a cool shot where he doesn't only bring the criminals to the cops and then just leaves them there. He hangs a sign of shame over their neck that says, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I did this," and it says their name and their crime, and even the types of crimes that were listed. Because some of them, it was like selling heroin to children. One is a rapist. One is I steal people's life savings. I mean, he goes after all kinds of injustices, not just like violent crimes. Like, you're stealing people's life savings. Like, that's Wall Street crooks. You know what I mean? Like, it shows like Superman, this Clark is trying to right lots of different types of wrongs. You know what I mean? And I thought that was a cool little touch too. That whole, just adding that other little element. I'm not just going to have you arrested. I'm going to publicly shame you for what you did. On top of that, if you're Superman too, and you don't want, and you're trying to basically inspire and make a message that transcends to everyone watching. Yeah. What a great way to do it. Just simply having the people arrested. All right, they're arrested. By publicly shaming them with the signs, it's letting people who do those things know, oh, we're on Superman's radar. Okay, I thought he was just, looking for, super-powered aliens coming out of the sky or guys robbing a bank. Like, he's coming for people who were just harming others. If you are harming other humans in some way, shape, or form, you're on Superman's radar, so you're going to want to second guess that, So I really love that element of this too. I mean, there were just so many great little touches in this book, man.
And when you say that, it also shows you how smart he is. Mm-hmm. He's not just this blunt figure. No, he understands how the world works and how different elements of the world affect people differently. So he knows that he has a very full plate of the things that he can bring and help the world with.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love the most is that every time he's flying, he has a smile on his face.
Yeah.
He's flying with a smile on his face.
Because this Clark, to me, in general, feels more like a legitimate Smallville farm boy who, is enjoying this and, the exhilaration of what he gets to do. Yep. It's a rush because it still feels somewhat like, I can't believe I can do this. You know what I mean? It's not something that he takes for granted, especially in year one where he's still, in theory, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and still, who knows if they were to continue this story, where he ends up in a few years, does years of this harden him after a while? But in year one here, I mean, it's all just, this is unbelievable. I can fly and I can do all this stuff and I can save people and I can, I can date mermaids and it's all a big victory lap for him right now.
One of my favorite scenes in the book is when you have the whole hostage situation in LexCorp.
Yeah.
And he saves the baby.
Yeah.
Right? And he grabs and he's flying sideways and he's just smiling.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to keep her happy. and then the baby throw ups on him.
Yeah.
But he understands.
Yeah.
But he understands like those little things that he has so much sensitivities towards the fragility of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that particular dichotomy has ever been explored in this detail.
Yeah.
You know, like we always have like a happy medium, and we only explore Superman immortality whenever you're talking about kryptonite, or whenever he's, you know, like Earth 1 does a great job of exploring that, because on issue 2 of Earth 1 he fights Parasite, and Parasite drains everything from him.
Yeah.
So he becomes literally mortal. And then you get this idea of him struggling with the idea of, oh my God, I've always known that you guys are weak, but now that I feel it, now I feel the fear that comes with mortality and that whole thing. So because you never get a de-weakened Superman, the way Frank Miller doubles down on him seeing how weak they are, and just spending so much time with them. I think that's what he does in this story that works so well. I don't think I've seen Clark Kent, the observer, the way you see him in this book. Mm-hmm. Like, you always know that he travels. We always know that he, you know, eats away books and he's super brilliant, but we don't really see Clark Kent, the one that observes people, the one that observes his surroundings,
the one that would make for a good reporter because he has an eye for detail and he likes to hear and, you know, see what's going on.
Like, you never really see that, and you see, and I love how that's not just one thing that happens in one place. It's something that you see.
It's a general character trait of his.
Yep. He's constantly observing and discovering his world.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
the thing. I mean, and honestly, to me, it's a tall order for me to buy into yet another origin. You know, there have been so many times that this story has been told. And you know that my favorite, you could say it. Come on, what's my favorite modern origin of Superman?
Is it Birthright?
Yes, it is. You know, to me, Birthright sort of set the bar for what a modern Superman reboot should be. And then this one, I'm like, at first I was skeptical. I'm like, do I really want to go down this road again? But Brandon sent me the book and it's Frank Miller. Let me see what's going on here. And what blew me away was how much new ground Miller was able to cover, and how he was able to expand on ideas that are not even necessarily new, but he just put his own spin on them. Because something I loved about Birthright also is that he has that reporter thing. And part of what Clark does when he realizes he's, you know, on his path to one day becoming maybe a superhero is he goes to travel the world, and he goes to Africa and he embeds himself with, you know, these gorillas in the wild. And he's trying to, like, basically understand humans and why we do the things that we do. And he's, you know, and you know, I've always liked the idea that Clark becoming a reporter, as you said, like, it's not just a foregone conclusion and something he does because, why not? It's something because he has always been just innately a curious person and fascinated by humanity and the planet, it's this world that he's on. And that would naturally make you want to be a journalist. It would make you want to learn things on a deeper level and see the whole world. And then it would give you great empathy as you do that. And Superman is always empathetic as one of his great, you know, qualities. And of course he would get that while traveling the world and observing humans and seeing, you know, kind of how, you know, feeling their fear, acknowledging their weakness, admiring their courage. You know, all those things would all add up to why he would be such an unbelievable symbol of hope to us, and how he would know how to inspire us, because we're not just these random things around him. We're these other people that share the planet with, that he's been keeping an active eye on all this time, trying to understand what makes us tick and trying to help us the best way that he can. You know, so Miller touched on all that, and I'm like, man, now I have another new you know, modern reinvention of Superman that I'm like really high on, and that I would love to see adapted into, you know, be it a movie or a series one day. You know, like this is a good story. This is like, you know, he knocked it out.
Now, on the basis of Frank Miller, I mean, we haven't talked about him today, right?
What? Frank Miller? He's involved?
Yeah. So I have a question.
Oh,
Have you read The Dark Knight Returns?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that this is the Superman that grows up to fight Bruce Wayne at the end of Dark Knight Returns?
I didn't make that connection, no.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
To me, which is why I like this book a lot also, is that I feel that, apart from the fact that The Dark Knight Returns is very much a Batman book, apart from that, right? I think that the Superman that we see in that book, which is, as we know, Dark Knight Returns is another Frank Miller magnum opus.
Very different Superman in that one.
Yes, and it kind of feels that it has to do with the idea that Frank Miller has this ability to influence his narrative function via the perspective of the character that he's exploring. So this is not necessarily Frank Miller's version of Superman. It's more of, this is how Bruce sees
Superman. Yeah,
exactly.
I like that idea. Yeah. In Dark Knight Returns, the Superman we see who's kind of like the square-jawed tool of the state kind of guy.
Literally.
Yeah.
Square-jawed.
That's how Bruce sees him. But maybe that's not necessarily him. And I know what you mean. Like, it's basically through the eyes of our narrator,
right,
so to speak.
I also find it very hilarious how the first real shot that you get of Clark is him with a boulder and a freaking eagle. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? But then again, this book finally shows us what Frank Miller really sees.
Yeah. That's the thing, because I wouldn't believe for a second that he would then become a tool of the state. This one, after he's been through the Navy and after they discharged him from the Navy for saving lives. Remember, ultimately, he loses his Navy career because instead of killing all those guys, he blows up the grenade himself, and they don't have to kill him. They can just bring him in. And then he did something heroic. He did something valiant, and they kick him out of the Navy for it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I have a hard time believing that this guy becomes that guy, And
especially after the whole thing with Lex Luthor, when Lex Luthor is, of course, doing his typical maniacal speech or whatever, and you see him going, that's not what we talked about. That's not, you know what I mean? Like disagreeing with everything he was doing. And I like that we finally know how he feels about the character, because to go this deep, to explore him in this fashion, it shows that Frank Miller has this profound respect for what this character can do and the effect that he brings to all culture. Because the cool thing about it is that even though it has this Greek or mythical perspective, most of these heroic tales of Greek mythology are there for what? To inspire us.
Yeah.
There to
they're
move
moral
us.
tales, and they're there to inspire and educate and
Yep. And this one falls right on there.
I mean, when the kids are old enough, I'm going to have them read this one for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, when I think about Superman's origins, like what every good Superman story needs to include, I feel like everything is represented in this book. And everything's represented really well. I know what my staples are. I'm just curious for you, like, what are 5 elements that a Superman origin has to touch on? Like, when I say elements, like the destruction of Krypton, for example.
Right. You got to have the destruction of Krypton. You got to have the idea of him being found by Jonathan or Martha. You got to have at least a glimpse of him running through the cornfield.
Yeah, that is
what I mean?
Pretty iconic shot at this point.
You gotta have that. You gotta have the first scenic save in the city.
Yeah.
And you gotta have the interview. To me, the interview.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
To me, the interview is the most important one, and I think because
Because Lois is the one who introduces the world to Superman, basically.
That's one. But also because I never thought about it this way till you asked me, but because it ties it up to one of the best Superman representations.
Ah.
Ties it up to Reeves.
Yeah.
And it's
Reeve.
like...
There's no S at the end. Reeve. Sorry. I'm a stickler.
Okay, Reeves. I don't know. Well, the S is... No.
The S is silent, but it does stand for hope.
But yeah, like it goes back to that, and I think it's after that movie, I don't know how many previous comic book versions of Superman introduced him via that interview or via that expose. Because it's the idea of him... Because... So Metropolis is this central hub, right?
Yeah.
So it's like New York City. It's like the city of the world, right?
Yes.
So the reason that interview was so important, because as soon as that interview was published in the Daily Planet, the whole world read it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about him being in the front page, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about
Hello,
how he gets
Earth.
known. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like the relationship with Lois Lane and all that stuff. In Superman Earth 1, interestingly enough, though, Clark does the interview.
Ah, yes. I haven't read that one in a few years.
So Superman Earth 1, so you've read it before?
Yeah, I read it like when it came out, however many years
So you
ago
read the
it was.
first volume, or have you read the whole thing?
First volume.
So interestingly enough, is it funny that Superman Earth 1, Volume 1, literally, like, you can see where Man of Steel took so much from. It's crazy. And it's funny because, and just a bit of a tangent, but so Superman Earth 1, a lot of the stuff in Man of Steel come from that. But then the final volume, which is Volume 3 of Superman Earth 1, takes from Man of Steel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because literally it's all about connecting the whole Tyrell invasion to Zod. And then it goes that direction. But yeah, man. So Destruction of Krypton, Finding of the Parents, Cornfields, Epic Save, Interview.
All right. See, I'm glad I asked. Let's see. You got to have the Destruction of Krypton. To me, you got to have, the big moment when he finds out his origin on Smallville. To me, that's a biggie. The moment, when does he find out? It's been handled before where he kind of always knows. It's been handled before where he finds out when he turns like 17, 18 years old. There have been different times and ways in which it happens, but I feel like that moment he finds out his true origin is very important. I feel like for me, everything about the Daily Planet is very important. And to me, it's kind of multifaceted, but you got to present me, the reader or the viewer, with like a Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane trio that to me, I can see it and it feels like the Daily Planet to me. I mean, it's hard to explain, but to me that, that trio
that
of
hustle
characters,
and bustle, that real world, that machine. Yeah.
And the way the juxtaposition of that and Smallville, he comes from this quiet, scenic farmland, and now he's here in the big city in arguably the most important newsroom in this world. And I got to have a Perry White who breaks through all the noise, who everyone listens to. And, you got to have the Jimmy Olsen who's going to be the photographer who kind of, sometimes isn't that great at what he does, but his heart's in the right place. And, him and Clay, he's a good pal to Clark. Yeah. And then that dynamic with Lois, so I feel like, Destruction of Krypton, the moment he finds out what he really is, his introduction at the planet, the big save, I agree. You got to have the big save. And I guess just one, defining moment in the story where he demonstrates the type of hero he's going to be. I feel like the origin needs to sort of establish who this hero is, so that to me, those are the things you got to hit up in your Superman origin story. If all you do as part of that is him beating up a bunch of bad guys at the end, And that's your best example of the type of hero he is. You drop the ball. There needs to be
you
something.
missed the point.
Yeah, you missed the point. There needs to be something in the movie that shows like, oh wow, stop it. I like it now. Remember, stop it. But damn it, Brandon. But yeah, so you got to have that moment where he does something Superman awesome that shows like he's a cut above the rest. There's something special about this hero, about this character. He's inspiring, all of humanity, or he's doing something that no one thought was possible. It's more than just, look at all the bad guys I beat up,
Yep.
So, yeah.
And you know what's funny? You say that, and it makes me go back to the idea that he captures the bad guys and puts signs on them.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the capture.
Yeah.
It's the fact that the capture saved people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And put all those people on notice,
Yep.
So, no, that's...
So I gotta shake the trees a little bit on your staples.
Oh, God.
So you said destruction. Now you said him discovering what he is.
Yes.
Can we both agree that one of the best moments of Man of Steel is that moment that young Clark has with Jonathan?
Which is straight out of another great Superman comic book origin, which if you haven't read yet, I've got it. I'll mail it to you. No, but it's Superman Secret Origin. It's Jeff Johns.
Okay.
It's Jeff Johns. It's Gary Frank who draws Superman. I mean, if you like the Reeve Superman, he draws Superman like Christopher.
Oh, nice.
And that scene is straight, like that's pretty much what they lifted that Jonathan Kent scene from.
So him with the spaceship like underneath the farm,
and where he's saying like, what if I just want to be your son? And Jonathan says, you are my son. Like that's basically like that scene is in that book. So you need to read Superman Secret Origin.
Okay,
but yes, that scene.
I have to.
It's amazing. I know.
That is awesome. That scene, and then of course, I love how Smallville had to stretch it. They had to make a season of it, but still, it's a good scene there. So you have that. So I agree with you that. Can I say that maybe one of the guilty pleasure influences that we both have in terms of the Daily Planet machine, did it come from Lois and Clark? Is there an influence there? Because to me, even though how corny that show is and all that stuff, the magic of that show is in the Daily Planet.
I love the Daily Planet. And Terry Hatcher was a dynamite Lois and the whole, it was great. But for me, it's pretty obvious. But the Reeve movies, the Richard Donner Daily Planet, that was the first Daily Planet I really got to know. And in that story, the way it's presented, that's where you first have that, the hustle and bustle and rat-tat-tat of the big city. It's such a sharp contrast from everything that came before. You have the first act, which is like Shakespeare in space, and we have British accents, and everything is grandiose and insane, and we have glowing robes. Then, you have the Smallville stuff where it looks like a painting, and it's, very nostalgic and picturesque and Americana and very sort of like old-fashioned, here's Kansas in America, y'all. And we're listening to, Rock Around the Clock and all that kind of stuff. And then when we come to Smallville, it's honking horns and people yelling at each other, and there's a million pedestrians everywhere. And then he gets into this newsroom, and he's like, here's the guy who's 6'4", and he disappears in that place. Like you can't even see him because there's so much going on. And Perry White is such a big, boisterous character. That to me, like that was the first Daily Planet where I'm like, whoa, yeah, this is a big change, and this is an important part of the story. A good Superman story needs to have something like this just to kind of show the progression of his story.
To me, one of the best additions, and it's funny how you bring the idea of the staples, and I go back to thinking of all the different origin stories of Superman specifically that I've read, and how pretty much every author has their vision of the staples. Like, this is one of those origin stories that it's so structured, in a way, if not excessively structured, which beckons each author to be even more creative in how they explore it, which is why this book works so well.
Yeah.
Now, to me, also in the idea of the destruction of Krypton, part of me is tempted to ask you if you prefer the Brando or the whole Jor-El Russell Crowe adventure. But at the same time, that's not a question to ask, because both of them are so powerful in their own way.
Yeah, they're completely different animals, and they work.
Yep. And it's funny because easily anybody can go, "Oh, that's Zack Snyder with all that nice, pretty stuff." I've never seen Krypton like that.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I could have spent the whole movie on that Krypton. I love that Krypton.
Yep. I wonder, did you ever see the Krypton show?
I saw like the first episode, and it looked really good. I was very intrigued by it. I just didn't follow through.
Was the aesthetic Kryptonian like?
Yeah, I mean, so Goyer developed it, and I think originally it was going to be like an in-canon prequel. And then, for whatever reason, I guess they decided not to directly link it. But there is a lot of connective tissue there. And it does look and feel like it could be of that Krypton, you know? Okay. They didn't have the budget to make it look quite as amazing as Snyder did. But
he's supposed to be like...
it's his grandfather. It's Superman's grandfather. It's Jor-El's father, who we follow in that one.
It's Kal-El's grandpappy.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you didn't ask me to pick one over the other, because it's really, it's true.
I was kind of tempted to do so, but then I was like, no, but you can't, because they're both, and it's like it's all about that. And that's the beauty of good writers and writing as an art form, because the whole thing about, like, isn't it funny, us that we're artists, we write, we do our own stuff, But isn't it funny how one of the first things that you learn in the life of an artist is that every story's been told, my friend.
Yeah.
You're not gonna say something new.
Yep.
But you just need to find a way that
it's your voice that makes it.
Exactly. And all the best Superman stories have that.
Yeah.
Which is why Zack Snyder's version of Superman is legitimately, that's his Superman.
Yeah.
And even and I love how we can have a world where we can have these different versions and everybody can attach themselves to this fantastic character.
Yeah.
Because great characters don't alienate people. They're all inclusive in different ways, shapes, and forms. And I love that I have another way. Like, I'm a big Flash fan.
Really?
Yes. So one of the things that I loved for the most was the fact that, especially that I became a Flash fan this late in life, right? And it's the idea of there's this new origin story that just came out this year, and it blew my brains off.
That's great.
Like it's crazy. Like, I just picked up an origin story for Harley Quinn that came out in DC Black Label. And it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we all know the story, And it's like, it's all about the voice.
It's all about how you tell the story,
Yep. So I can't wait for the next Superman origin story, but I am gonna say this: they got big shoes to.
They got big shoes to fill, for sure, for sure. Yep. But Brandon, man, it's been amazing having you on to talk about all this. Awesome. I know we've been kind of dancing around doing this for a while. We finally made the time to do it, and I think we should do this again sometime. What do you think?
We should.
Yeah,
we definitely should.
Brandon, I know people want to hear your passionate ranting. I know there's another place they could do it. Why didn't you tell them?
So me and my buddy Isaac from Sweden,
Isaac Wolf.
So we have an anime podcast called The Amateur Otaku. The Amateur Otaku podcast is available everywhere: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public, even though nobody listens there. And there's so many places that you can listen to it. We also have a YouTube channel that's ever growing where you can go catch the podcast there. I'm also working very close to Wobam Entertainment and bringing them back into different things and working on a podcast. So we got a lot of great stuff going on.
Nice.
And I also have a new music channel where I'm working on original music and stuff like that. So
what's the name of the channel?
So it's called Lexin Sona, and I'm working on an EP that I'm going to be recording very soon.
Check out this guy. Yeah. And how can people find you over on the Twitter?
At the Scarlet Fan 52 on Twitter, at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Instagram, and Brandon Alvarado on Facebook.
All right. So, thank you, Brandon. Until we meet again, you're the man.
The Superman.
And that is the Fanboy Podcast for this week. Stay tuned. I'll be back next week with episode 119. And somewhere in the middle of that, for those of you who like when I talk wrestling, there's going to be a kind of spin-off of this show that is wrestling-centric. That's right. Next week, there will be an episode of The Wrestling Fanboy, and it's going to go up on YouTube, and I'm going to release it as a bonus episode here on the Fanboy Podcast main feed. So if you see it on your feed and you're not a wrestling fan, feel free to bypass it. It's not going to be replacing episode 119 next week, but it's going to be in addition to episode 119 next week. So keep your eyes and ears open for the Wrestling Fanboy. I don't think it's going to be as long as this show, but I think, I'm kind of planning basically maybe every 2 weeks or so, releasing a half hour to 45 minute breakdown on what's going on in the wrestling world and what it makes me think and feel, because things in that arena are insanely exciting right now, and I need some place to talk about it. So keep an eye out for that, wrestling fans, all 5 of you who listen to me. And for everyone else who's listening, thank you. Please take some time to go and leave me a 5-star review. It would really help the show to grow and continue to find new eyes and ears out there. Thanks again for spending this last, hour and almost 40 minutes with me. And until next week, life is chaos. Be kind. Adios.